Wanted to say happy Diwali, Abhijit. Thank you for being on the show. As always, last time you came here, got a lot of flack because I titled the video Alpha Putin Destroys Beta Zelensky, which is fitting with our TG, where we find ourselves amid a war again in the 8th month, I believe. And yesterday I read that several important communication power stations, have been blasted with missiles from Russia in Ukraine. And I was just wondering, 8 months of war in 2022, in a time where people project diplomacy and peace all around the world. How is this even happening?
It's not unusual. How long has the war in Yemen carried on? A few years.
But Yemen is like a...
No, but see, the American occupation of Iraq, the real fun started about 2-3 years into the occupation. No? So, it's nothing new. I think what's... look, the moment Biden got elected, I knew kuch hone wala hai. I absolutely was convinced that at that time, February mein kuch nahi hoga. Because from everything we were seeing with Russian troops and things like that, the supply lines, the logistics, everything was absolute crap. Which is kind of proven right. I mean, look at the bashing that Russian troops have taken. The third issue has been what the hell is Putin thinking? When you realize that this isn't the same Ukrainian army that you faced in 2014. By the way, the assessment that he won't invade wasn't based on the weakness of the Ukrainian army, right? That I thought, based on whatever my friends in Israel and Germany told me, was it's not a good army. It won't stand up. It's a bit of a joke. But what spine they've shown. But it was based more on the inadequacy of Russian troops. Okay? However, when your troops are inadequate, there are certain tactics you adopt. So, for example, what does NATO do when it invaded, when it bombed Yugoslavia, when it bombed Kosovo, when it bombed Libya, when it bombed Iraq, when it bombed Afghanistan? You first hit the electricity infrastructure, you hit the transport infrastructure, you hit all the petroleum dispersal points, you hit the leadership. These guys did none of that. They've started targeting energy infrastructure now, after 8 months in the war. And you're sitting there and thinking, how dumb are you? Right? I think they're counting too much on the weather. So the weather works both ways in winter, generally works both ways in Russia's favor. If it's not cold enough, then you have a phenomenon called there's a phenomenon called the Rasputitsa that starts up in October, November. Okay? बहुत सारा बारिश गिरता है उधर and it turns most of eastern Ukraine into slush. Okay. So trucks can't move, armor especially can't move, etc., and that is what really screwed over the German army, right? And what happens in this case is usually the winter comes, and if it's a bad winter, everything is frozen solid. So tanks and trucks can start moving again. The issue is because it is so cold, tanks and trucks get stuck. As in they can move through the frozen ground, but can you get them to start up in that kind of cold?
Right.
Western equipment probably isn't made for that kind of cold. Whereas Russian equipment by default is made for that kind of cold. They're very, it's like a modern Mercedes versus a 1970s ka ambassador gaadi. Ambassador gaadi kahan jao, anybody can tinker with it and fix it. Mercedes, one thing happens,
right,
and you're screwed. Like, have you ever been able to fix your car if you're stuck somewhere?
No, actually had a pretty solid incident outside GK quite recently.
And you have to get roadside support.
I had to get Allianz Mercedes for that. And it took about 1.5 hours. Thank God I was outside King's Court, nowhere else.
Right.
Yeah.
Which is still a civilized place to be.
Yes.
Horribly constructed, but still a civilized place to be. Typical tasteless DLF architecture, of course. But if you had an ambassador or a Maruti 800 or even an Alto, fatafat koi
I could hotwire it. Someone could hotwire it or fix it. Yeah.
So that's the way Russian equipment is. Western equipment is very sophisticated, but therefore prone to much greater failure. So you have two scenarios. One is a winter that is very mild, in which case the ground does not freeze, in which case armored truck and therefore all logistics movement becomes very problematic.
For Ukraine, not for Russia.
For Ukraine.
Yeah.
But also for Russia, though the Russians have methods of dealing with that. Okay. On the other hand, if it's a particularly bitter winter, a lot of the Western supplied equipment would not work. Number one. Number two, what will happen is you will generally see that the level of heat and warmth required by Western Europe and Ukraine in that winter would increase exponentially, and the gas consumption becomes that much higher. And of course, the gas is cut off from Russia. So there's lots of things that can work in. They're counting too much on the weather.
When you look at a country's defense, how many factors do you factor in to understand if they will win a war or not?
Look, you look at a lot. The issue is there's always that one unpredictable element. It's stochastic, right? So there's always that one or two unpredictable elements that you would have never seen anywhere. Okay. So in this particular case, you're looking at Russian industrial supply for weapons, which is abysmal. They've clearly used up all their stocks because अब जो infrastructure पे attacks हो रहे हैं ad hoc हो रहे हैं every 15 days or so. So clearly taking a while to build up missile stocks and then using them.
Are they not prone to attack? Like, would Ukraine ever do something like, let's attack Russia back? Would that happen?
They did, no? That's
they blew up a bridge. Yeah.
Kerch Bridge. And apparently the attack in Belgorod was also, which is just across the border in Russia, was also a Ukrainian attack, right? Apparently 2 helicopters went in and tried to do some stunt out there. So that's there. They've tried that. I think their ability for offense is very limited. They're focusing mostly on defensive weapons and defense. But there's leadership. Even the best army, if you've got a bad leader, you're screwed.
You think Zelensky is incompetent to lead an army?
No, but I think Putin is getting increasingly incompetent.
You had a different point of view when we first met.
Clearly, that's why I said increasingly incompetent.
Yeah, so what is happening? Does he feel himself boxed in? Is he being suddenly subject to distrust by essential backers?
I think what's happened is, and this is what the West says, the issue is you measure what is right and what is wrong by what is happening on the battlefield. Now, here the problem is, you see the missiles aren't landing where they should. The targeting is extremely bad. Like I said, why did you take 8 months to target critical infrastructure, which would have disproportionately reduced the number of Russian casualties since day one?
Right.
You did not. Second, I think the issue is he was only listening to information that he wanted to listen to. Nobody had the guts to tell him the truth.
Okay, the emperor has no clothes.
Exactly. I suspect, and this is what the West has been saying for a long time. The issue is the West went on saying he's running out of missiles. They've been saying this since March. But that missile shortage hasn't shown up right till October, November. Which is why they've got Iranian drones. Iranian drones, two-faced problem. They can only carry about 50 to 70 kgs of warhead, which isn't a very big explosion. Okay? To take out big energy infrastructure, you need 400, 500 kg warheads. Where are those warheads? We don't know. On the other hand, it's very effective in the sense that it saturates enemy air defenses. They have to focus on shooting down essentially flying grenades is a bit of an understatement, but assume in the overall scheme of things, a flying grenade requires an enormous amount of investment from their air defenses. So it's a great way of eroding somebody's air defenses. Do I think Russia will get its act together? Yes. But again, the variables are just too many out here.
When you talk about Russia and Ukraine, do countries have a policy to be war ready? And I know the US has weapons that they've never even used, that they just have stocks of. But are they now getting into the kind of stocks for war that they might have like reserved for years. What I'm trying to say is India never really goes to war, but I'm sure India has lots of weapons that it keeps for war in case something happens. So is it possible that at some point Russia will just become completely disarmed as a consequence of fighting this war?
They're never going to be disarmed because, like India, they have a huge stock of dumb weapons.
What's dumb weapons?
Dumb weapons is things that don't have precision guidance and things. So shells, just normal free fall bombs, mortar bombs, etc., etc., etc. ठीक है, वो तो कुछ होने वाला नहीं है. At most, some of them will blow up their own troops because they're really old or some crap like that. But other than that, ज़्यादा कुछ होने वाला नहीं है. I think the only country that maintains full wartime readiness in a sense is America because they have the money to do it. You know, that kind of wartime readiness costs money. As in maintaining a constant alert of sorts. No other country has the money to do it. So they always take about 2-4 weeks, maybe even 2 months to gear up for war and things like that, right? It always takes a while. And it mostly has to do with the logistics chain. A lot of countries will be prepared for a rapid reaction in case of a one-off attack. But, you know, when the enemy starts preparing for war, you pick it up with satellite intelligence and then you start preparing as well. So satellite intelligence and general intelligence capacities allow it for armies to be cheaper, that they don't have to be in peak readiness at all times. Whereas America feels it needs to intervene
at all times.
At all times. So it doesn't keep all its military, part of the military.
Yeah. So what could be some of the reasons for waging a war still 8 months into constant bombing and shelling and gunfights? Is this, like we discussed last time, Putin has a dream to reunify the old Soviet Union that he once saw when he was a kid? Will he make that happen? And at this point, in 8 months, does he not have people essentially stopping him? Is he really so strong and powerful that countries can't stop him?
He's got the largest arsenal of nuclear weapons
in the world. More than the US.
Yes.
यार पर ये तो हमेशा हम सुनते रहते हैं nuclear war होगा. It never happens.
You never say never.
So I mean, last time that happened, you remember what happened in Japan, right? That was the last time that nuclear weapons were ever used in the world.
Japan's mistake was? Japan didn't have nuclear weapons. If 2 countries have nuclear weapons, kuch nahi hoga. But if one country does not, and it really depends on who Putin is prioritizing. Russia does not tolerate leaders who lose wars. It does not tolerate weak leaders.
Like strongmen?
It would much rather prefer a murderous, psycho, victorious leader than a kind loser. Historically. So you look historically. Who was Catherine's husband? Tsar Peter or Paul? Complete weakling, gave up all of Russia's victories on the battlefield. They immediately staged a coup. His own wife staged a coup, had him killed and took over as...
What?
Yeah. And which is why her son could never forgive his mother for killing his father. And after he became the Tsar, when she died, he passed the law banning women from the throne. Before that, Russia had more female rulers than it had male rulers, right? So there was Tsarina Elisaveta, there was Tsarina Anna, there was Tsarina Katrina, and I think there was another Katrina who was Tsar Peter the Great's wife. It had 4 Tsarinas, ruling Tsarinas, not queen consorts. So ये सब चक्कर हुआ है. Then you've had Lenin got shot through the head. That bullet never dislodged. I mean, he wasn't killed because he signed the Treaty of Brest-Litovsk and crap like that. You had इसके खिलाफ तो coup होके, and then Gorbachev lost all power.
Right.
Medvedev, after he screwed up in Libya, allowing the Libya sanctions to go through, he's never been back in power ever again, and he's treated like a second-grade entity even within Russia. ठीक है? They are very, very... They do not accept failure. On the other hand, even nasty leaders, Tsar Nicholas, the entire family got shot. Nasty leaders, psycho leaders, will be celebrated. Ivan the Terrible ruled to a ripe old age, even though he was called terrible for a reason. No, Stalin, best example. I think Stalin killed more Russians than the German army did. Nobody removed him from power.
Have you read The Dictator's Handbook?
Yeah.
You have?
Yeah.
It's a wonderful book.
It's a wonderful book.
I've just been reading it. It's changed what I think about politics completely. I don't think about countries anymore. I think about people who want to be in power.
Yeah.
Forever. And I remember reading about Robert Mugabe. That guy was on to something.
God, I don't know if he was... Okay, so Stalin did a lot of good.
Okay.
Robert Mugabe did a lot of shit.
Of course.
Of course, Stalin did a huge amount of shit as well. But then he did industrialize Russia. He did defeat Germany.
Right.
And remember, Russia defeated Germany. It wasn't the star-spangled banner that was hoisted atop the Reichstag. It was the, Russian banner of victory, the crescent and the hammer and the sickle. Mugabe, on the other hand, took a stable, prosperous agrarian economy and turned it to pure shit. He could have gone the Botswana way. And Botswana has been Botswana has what, about $14,000 per
It's
capita?
a pretty prosperous country. They have I think I have a friend who went to a UN peacekeeping mission there once, or like a UN medical mission, something like that.
Medical mission, because they're quite rich in Botswana. Huh?
Okay.
You could do the Botswana model that Namibia adopted. They're completely non-controversial and they're doing a good job with Namibia. Seychelles and Mauritius are the two other African countries that are very rich. He could have gone that way. He did not, because the ZANU-PF was a very, very nasty party. And, even during the war of liberation, they brought North Korean mercenaries over, North Korean troops over to kill entire villages at a time.
Right.
So it wasn't a very nice... if you take banks, kya good kiya credit, kya bad kiya debit. Stalin would still has two huge achievements: industrializing a unindustrializable country and defeating probably the most advanced industrial power at that point of time. What does Mugabe have to his credit?
Yeah, I'm not celebrating at all. I'm just saying, when I was reading the book, we could use that premise where staying in power and not caring about the goodness or the good of the population becomes more important. Using that premise, can we apply it to the two countries at war right now, Ukraine and Russia, where it becomes less about what is good for the populace in terms of policy, in terms of decisions, in terms of whatever you do, but more about how can I stay in office as long as possible.
So Putin, I don't think it's about the office. He genuinely believes that NATO is a threat. I mean,
And he's in...
So for him, it is the good of the people. He's not looking to stay in office. It is about the good of the people. For him. For Zelensky, I think it's very different. He's completely taken in by his celebrity and all of that. Because he's posing for what? Vogue magazine and shit like that?
Now he's still doing that?
Kar to raha hai. Yeah. I mean, you look at that documentary that came out. He's got Oswald Boateng to couturier his seemingly casual olive green fatigues.
Yes, to show that he is in a state of war. I always like when leaders change their appearances to mark the season that the country is in. It's such a wonderful...
America thrives on assholes who condomize their population.
Condomize?
Condomize. Turn their people into condoms.
Okay.
Yeah, as in use and throw.
Okay.
I mean, you don't reuse a condom, do you?
Of course.
So, yeah.
Never.
And some people might be some fetish or kink of somebody. But anyway. You look at puppet leaders, Ahmad Chalabi, who they wanted to install as their puppet in Iraq. Total fraud. Zelensky, who could easily accept... He could have just said, we're not joining NATO.
You think someone else is controlling him? You think he's not independent?
America doesn't do they don't do that kind of control as we understand it. It's more this sort of validation circle and celebrity and making you a global leader. And tell me, what leader of Ukraine? Nobody would have known the president of Ukraine over the last 20, 30 years. But everybody now knows Zelensky's name.
Yeah, it would be a country known for escorts and good software. That's it.
Exactly. But today everybody knows Zelensky's name.
Yeah.
Ghani. Who knew a leader of Afghanistan till Ghani? Ashraf Ghani or Karzai.
So you think that
Karzai winning Time Best Dressed Man of the Year award, Man of the Year award. You know, he won Best Dressed Man of the Year award. You know that, no?
I did not until now.
Yeah. Karzai won that.
So you're saying that what America does by allying with people, even softly though, is it gives them a PR makeover that puts them on the global map.
Exactly. It plays to their, and it's a gravy train. It's a gravy train because we know for a fact that the $60 billion odd earmarked for Ukraine, a lot of it is going into the pockets of these assholes who run the government. Just like, the $1 trillion odd spent on Afghanistan. I've been to Afghanistan. I can tell you there's nothing even remotely close to it worth $1 trillion out there. My South Delhi Municipal Corporation budget, which is not even $1 billion, it'll be a few tens of millions of dollars, is better maintained than $1 trillion investment Afghanistan. Okay, na? All the money went into the pockets of Afghan leaders. All the money went into the pocket of Iraqi leaders. All the money went into the pocket of Libyan factions and shit like that. Nothing actually goes down to the people. So it's financial incentivization, it's the validation incentivization, it's the globalization and celebratization of things which makes you buy their propaganda line over the needs of your people.
You want to be their poster boy, their newest project. It's like Hollywood giving rise to a new starlet if you sign up with the studio.
It's very addictive. It's very, very addictive. Take Rana Ayub. There's today Wire published their retraction of the full Meta story.
I don't know what that story is.
So it is basically the guy who works for them, Devesh, their tech expert, he forged a lot of the evidence, and they wrote the story saying that Meta has given Amit Malviya, they've made him, for all effects and purposes, they've made him CEO of Facebook.
Oh, right. There was a story that said that Amit Malviya can press a button and you will be banned. Something
exactly.
like that. Yeah.
So, isme kya hua ki that entire story, it turns out this fellow manipulated the evidence.
Yeah.
He had done this before in the tech fog. He never got caught. Tech fog was done between him and another guy called Ayushman Kaul from some outlet called Logically AI. There's nothing AI about it. It's one more fraud outlet. And the basis of both story was, bro, I've seen it, believe me. Right? But because the tech fog story did not get called out, this guy thought he could get away with another complete fabrication.
Right.
And he decided to do this story. Now, the problem out here was, किस context में बात कर रहे थे? I've lost my.
You were talking about Rana Ayub.
Right. Oh. Now, here they got called out because they took on somebody who was huge, as opposed to TechFog, who is a piddy little company that nobody's ever heard about. Rana Ayub, what happened was, I got directed to this because somebody had quote-tweeted the Wire's official retraction. This lady's name is Meera Kamdar. Mm-hmm. She was on the New York Times' editorial board. And she's saying, kudos to Wire for dealing with this in an exemplary way. Now, Meera Kamdar, if you go to her Twitter timeline, is one of the biggest supporters of Rana Ayub. And I'm sitting and going, this is a woman who is literally applauding journalism, fact-free journalism, for which Rana Ayub has never produced a single shred of evidence, applauding the Wire for actually doing something. At least Wire held itself to account. No? Okay, it took a lot of coercion or whatever and browbeating.
Right, but they saved their credibility.
They saved, well, I don't know if it's a bad hit, dude. So I don't know if they saved their credibility. But you know what was particularly surprising in all of this was when the tech fog story came out, News Laundry was celebrating the tech fog story. So they did an interview with the same Devesh and Ayushman duo, where these two were saying, bro, trust me, bro, I know. I've seen it. He hacked my phone. He hacked my WhatsApp in front of me. And I was like, oh, teri maa ki, whatever. No evidence given. Just screenshots just like this one. News Laundry celebrated that story. But you look at any Facebook panel, there's a congruity between where News Laundry gets invited to get platformed and shit like that. Okay? So you look at all the people who, from the left, who called out Wire, it was only because Facebook ke paas paisa hai. And it shows you that these people who called out basically have no, their only master is money. Be it Pranesh Prakash or News Laundry, they were all tech fog ke time, they were literally jizzing in their pants. Suddenly kya hua? And Facebook gives a lot of money. Facebook, there's every tech event in Delhi. Facebook is a sponsor because there's a big gravy train to go around shutting up any discussion.
I want to ask you this because your name is obviously like a hit on YouTube, right? And I've been noticing something very interesting. I was speaking to Kushal about this also. I don't know if it's the ties with the central government, but for some reason, Facebook, especially YouTube, really incentivize Hindu-centric content over anything that is remotely not that. They do anything that is like Abhijit Iyer Mitra destroys liberals, like stuff like that, right?
It destroys.
It always incentivizes how to be a better Hindu, how to be a better Sanatani. There's this, I do not know if it's genuine interest or there's a resurgence. It could be in the circles that you occupy. And I'm sure like people are more interested in understanding ki ab aajkal Hindu kya hota hai, kya scene hai. They want to read and reconstruct that identity. But these platforms certainly are making people more aligned to the right by the algorithms that they feed you.
No, it's not the algorithms that are feeding you that. It is basically going to where demand is. Now, had it been any one platform, I would have said shayad skewed hai. Okay? So, for example, who are the two TV channels that have the highest rating? Times Now and Republic.
Okay.
To such an extent that even India Today had to hire Sudhir Chaudhary over and above the objections of Rajdeep Sardesai. And even Rajdeep Sardesai's control of the English channel, where Rahul and Shiv and Gaurav take a very nationalist line.
Right.
Okay, why is that happening?
You're saying this has nothing to do with...
No. Let me show you what the pattern is. So clearly, because India Today was running lots of stories saying ye ratings fake hai and they were supporting Arnab Goswami going to jail for fixing the ratings and all that shit. You remember that? Times Now also ganged up on him.
Correct.
But Times Now Republic top, if those ratings were fake, why would India Today hire an ultra-nationalist guy like Sudhir Chaudhary to come over? And Sudhir Chaudhary is not even very sophisticated. He's one of the crudest right-wing anchors you can get. And he says really dumb shit. But that's generally the case out here. But why would they hire him? I mean, trust your own reporting. Agar you are saying that these ratings are all screwed, then you know that he had a very high viewership and you hired him still. Kyun?
Right.
Kiya na tumne. Then Sudhir Chaudhary's rating should have also been crap. They should have been unreal. Nahin, tumne hire kiya. Number one. Number two, you look at newspapers. Left-wing newspapers की आजकल readership ही क्या है?
Newspapers पढ़ता ही कौन है आजकल? Not even just...
Even then, readership है ही.
What is a left-wing newspaper? What would you call like a
Hindu, Telegraph.
The Mint?
The Mint isn't even remotely left-wing.
No?
They're very business-oriented.
Okay.
They're quite free market oriented. I mean, I don't agree with a lot of things they say, but that's a different matter. They don't have any pronounced ideological bias, but the Hindu has a very pronounced ideological bias. The Telegraph has a very, very anti-government bias. Why aren't they commercial successes? And then this follows up on YouTube, where NDTV, I think, has the highest number of subscribers, no? 100 million or something? No,
I don't know.
10 million subscribers.
Was it there?
Yeah. But where's the viewership? So clearly something is happening out there, right? Clearly something is happening. And YouTube, I've noticed, is not like Amazon. Amazon will first show you Amazon products, Solimo, whatever. Solimo, if you look for Le Creuset enamel wear, the first 5 pages will be Solimo enamel wear.
Of course, they always do that, yeah.
Which is illegal. They're being taken to court for it. It's completely illegal. The government knows what they're doing is illegal, and they're bribing somebody in the PMO to not take action on it. But on YouTube, you go and search for The Wire. You'll get The Wire. You search for News Laundry, you'll get News Laundry. You search for Vinamre Kasana, you will get Vinamre Kasana. Whereas if I search for Vinamre Kasana used underwear in Amazon, some people might have that fetish, I don't know. Vinamre Kasana used underwear, you will get every bloody celebrity's used underwear. You have to go to Google,
right,
and search for Vinamre Kasana used underwear to get the link in Amazon to Vinamre Kasana used underwear. So if Google is able to provide such a good algorithm to products on Amazon, why isn't Amazon able to provide the same this thing?
But that still doesn't answer the question, why are we skewing to the right on these platforms?
We're not skewing to the right. It's the country is generally more to the right these days.
Yeah.
Socially, not economically. Economically, nobody can, I mean, we're born communists. I mean, literally, I think Stalin and Lenin copulated with every Indian, and we're all Marx ke najaiz aulad. But economically, because we all want freebies. You'll go to a chaat wala and ask him, Bhaiya, aloo tikki, are 5 rupaye kam kar do yaar. But none of these chutias will ever go to a 5-star and say, abhe 5 rupaye kam kar do.
Right.
Okay. The same guy in Taj, what's that?
Taj Palace.
Taj Mansingh. Machan mein, they do a dahi papadi chaat for something like 800-900 rupees. कोई कभी बोलेगा उस चुतिया से 5 रुपए कम करो? नहीं.
Never.
और उसके ऊपर GST, CGST ये सब सब लगता है, टिप सर्विस चार्ज लगता है, कोई नो क्वेश्चन आउट देयर. बट चाट वाले से भैया 5 रुपए कम करो, ये क्या है? सो इट इजंट. The country has moved right, and this is why you look at the political scenario. Why is the left-wing space shrinking? Pehle, assume this was the political spectrum and this is the center. So the mic is the center, this is right, this is left. Okay, the BJP used to be somewhere here, the Congress used to be somewhere
in the middle,
centrist here, and the CPIM used to be here.
Right.
Modi has literally shifted the spectrum here. This is now the BJP.
Yeah.
Okay, it's economically, it's very left-wing. So your left space is literally only this much left. And so the Congress has moved so left that they've pushed out the CPIM. इसीलिए CPIM के 5 seat बचे हैं, और Congress now has the same number of MPs 2 elections running that the CPIM used to get.
Right.
So, I mean, what statistically you look at it, TV ratings, general elections, newspaper circulation, readership, everything points towards the fact that Hindu consolidation is happening, which is what Hindutva is all about. There is a reason it cannot be casteist and it's about social engineering, because Hindu consolidation cannot happen when you have caste divisions.
Right.
Right. Which is why you have a scheduled tribe president and an OBC prime minister. और बोलते हैं साले ब्राह्मणवाद पेट्रियार्की है.
I'm still confused as to what is the future of the left then, and you're a man of the right, like you clearly identify as someone on the right.
I'm classical right though.
Okay.
Which is economic right as well.
Okay.
Okay. There is no party for people like me. क्योंकि मेरे हिसाब से सब चूतिए हैं. But it's not the rightening of India, it is the Hindu resurgence in India.
And that has happened because Modi became Prime Minister?
No, it happened because the Congress turned extreme left to the point of alienating Hindus. Even when I'm like the last election, I really didn't want to vote for Modi because koi privatization nahi hua tha, kuch nahi hua tha, la di da di da. I was like, punishment vote dena chahiye. And the moment Rahul Gandhi opens his mouth, I've almost made up my mind कि Congress के लिए vote करूँ. I'm like, I just look at his face on the machine and I'm like, well, it's not there on the machine.
You said that last time too, I remember that.
BJP, I mean, hold your nose and vote for the BJP, but vote for the BJP.
Yeah.
It has a lot more to do with the Congress alienating Hindus, plus the reputation for efficiency Modi has. Because if it was some kind of a joke of a candidate from the BJP, it wouldn't have worked.
Yeah.
So you need to almost symbiotic. The success of one has to be balanced by the incompetence and clumsiness of the other.
What is the... there's very funny videos of our External Affairs Minister that go live on YouTube every now and then. Like, S. Jaishankar, that's his name, right? S. Jaishankar is right? It's like Jaishankar, Sigma Grindset, where he's giving like a witty response to someone abroad and then they just burst in laughter or like a celebratory kind of style. Would it happen if in Manmohan Singh's era, would it happen in a time when, say, the PM was not as strong? Why are we seeing like a strong India diplomatically, where like this minister suddenly has a lot more, like the office seems fuller?
You actually saw a lot of these statements come out when Nehru was the Prime Minister. You also had a lot of this glib talk when Shashi Tharoor was Deputy Foreign Minister. Glib talk does not a foreign policy make. Krishna Menon and Nehru were complete bloody failures. Krishna Menon, as our ambassador to the UN, was famous for his acerbic wit. You read some of the stuff he says, it's like dhada dhad. It's like Javed Miandad hitting sixes. Sorry, that's the only...
that's okay. I remember the reference, yeah.
It shows my age. I don't even know who the new cricket... I can't name a single member of the current cricket team and all that shit. Shashi Tharoor, he used to make very, very glib remarks. A foreign policy is not about glib remarks. A foreign policy is actually very boring stuff that happens in the background. It's about your representatives abroad making a lot of contacts and connections. First of all, we're understaffed in there. It needs to be 7-8 times the size that it currently is. Making calm, calculated assessments, constantly being in touch with political forces, writing back those reports, processing that policy at home, and doing things. The glib remarks are the icing on the cake. In India, generally, glib remarks have been a sign that there is no cake. It's a thing of icing. And Krishna Menon, our UN ambassador, and Jawaharlal Nehru is the classic example of that. Now, at that time, India's economy was tanking. Here, the one good thing we have going for us is the economy is actually very reasonably managed. Probably we haven't taken the risks and done all the liberalization we should have, but it's not badly managed.
Right.
ठीक है. It's a bit of status quo, but ठीक है, जो है सो है. That helps you a lot. A lot of the glibness, this glibness didn't exist when Ukraine got invaded 4-5 months back, 6 months, 8 months back.
Yeah.
At that time, there was absolute paralysis. Do you remember that? There were no statements coming out of the Foreign Office.
Yeah.
Then once the Saudis and all of them started putting pressure on America, on the gas and shit like that, when world food prices, even before the Saudis is only in the last month or so, when the world food prices started shooting up, the talking points of the West were, if you do business with Russia, you're my enemy.
Right.
George Bush, remember, you're either with us or against us. Mm-hmm. It wasn't stated in the same way because of the historical baggage of that particular term, but effectively that was the message that was being given to everybody. तब तो हम सब चुचुंदर की तरह खींच करके जाके you'll scurry away and hide. Right. After it was realized that, the West made the mistake of thinking that a small economy like Russia, which is a smaller economy than ours, cannot have such a disproportionate influence on the world.
But it did.
It did. They didn't account for that. Why? Because it was not just gas, it was lots of rare earths and special minerals and metals that come out of Siberia and shit like that, and global supply chains. They had also pissed off the Emiratis and the Saudis at around about the same time. Trump never pissed off the Saudis.
He liked the Saudis.
He liked the Saudis. He started off condemning them, and then he became friends with them when he realized that MBS could be a reformer. Remember, the Saudis also changed their behavior a lot.
Right.
MBS has done a lot out there. The women ask for driving rights. Today, a woman can walk around in shorts.
I also hacked Jeff Bezos' phone though.
Yeah. So there's a lot that the Americans have made too many enemies all at once. Indira Gandhi always used to say, never alienate all the people all the time. They alienated all the people at the same time, including threatening India. And now when we realize that America is in an extremely vulnerable position and Europe is in no position to dictate, and उनका anger थोड़ा ठंडा हुआ है कि वो तुम्हारे मुंह पे तमाचा नहीं मारेंगे, now we make these glib remarks. But remember, a foreign policy is not about glib remarks.
Right. Are we better off in our foreign policy now with this new minister than we were, say, in the last tenure of the last government? Are we a competent country? Like, is India lauded across the world as a country that is known for its fantastic foreign policy? Is that happening at all? Or are we just being told that because of perceptions on YouTube?
No. See, YouTube, Jai Shankar destroys XYZ.
I know.
Is not the same as reality. Right? Like, as far as YouTube goes, I'm a very influential person. Reality में तो मैं टट्टी हूँ. ठीक है? तो the problem here is Indian foreign policy has never really changed. The general view of Indian foreign policy since Nehru times is it is a failure compensation policy, which, because India is never able to rapidly industrialize like, say, Japan or Germany rebuilding, or China actually developing, or Malaysia actually developing, or Singapore actually developing, not redeveloping, has substituted a lot of mumbo jumbo and petulance for an actual policy.
So they just compensate for doing nothing? Like, what was it?
And the thing is, if you look at a lot of private conferences that we've had at India Habitat Center and India International Center, where former ambassadors, the older generation, not the post-1990 generation, the older generation who were really well-trained diplomats, would come and tell you, look, we were a beggar state in the 60s. We went on having money problems. And so we had to use rhetoric to compensate somehow. That is a view that is strongly held by the West even today. The other thing is, the only time that they thought that India's foreign minister was commensurate with India's importance as opposed to India's self-importance was when S.M. Krishna was there.
Okay.
Who was the most dull, boring foreign minister India had, who went to the UN Security Council and started reading out the Portuguese foreign minister's speech without even realizing he was reading out the Portuguese foreign minister's speech.
But he got the job done?
And no, he was just the equilibrium. It was where India's foreign policy matched its minister.
Okay.
Otherwise, we use glib talkers and
charisma actors.
Like, tell me, what did Shashi Tharoor do for policy?
All I know is a very charismatic man. I just know that about him.
Great, but charisma is not a foreign policy.
Of course, yeah.
Krishna Menon was a fantastic speaker. But our foreign policy was known as the A-grade chutia policy in those days.
Yeah. I think the problem is that we often confuse someone's rising up in political ranks as competence, because acquiring power is one thing and actually affecting policy is another thing completely.
Totally different. I think most profound policy changes happen in the shadows without much tantrum. If you have real change, you don't require the tantrums. In fact, you seek to underplay the tantrums because you want least resistance. It is when you do not really have... Simple example. जब farmers bill लागू हुए थे, did you notice the government did it very quietly, this thing? And it took a month, 2 months for the protest to really pick up and become big.
Right.
Because it was a fantastic bloody policy. Right. The thing was, we don't know who mobilized all those crowds and things after 1.5, 2 months and brought them out on the street. But that is where India shows its, institutional incompetence. Ki your intelligence agency should have been tracking this, seeing ki ye ho raha hai, thwarted it even before it got to the protest stage and shit like that. Kuch nahi kiya, and ultimately you had to withdraw the policy. Why? Because it was a fantastic policy. जब कश्मीर का ये रिवोक किया तुमने, 370 status, modified the constitution, constitutional reform, let's call it constitutional reform. Nobody made some halla gulla about it before. It was just some open source intelligence which picked up lots of troop movements and CRPF and BSF troops going in there. And then suddenly out of the blue it happened. And it was mostly because the secrecy around that policy wasn't maintained. Okay? Of course, it got talked up a bit, but whatever. It was one of those rare jhatka policies that worked. But generally, good policy, you do not... A good policy speaks for itself. It doesn't need embellishment, makeup, adornment. Like a beautiful woman. A beautiful woman does not need Chanel or Dior. Oh. On the other hand, Chanel and Dior foundation won't make an ugly person pretty.
That's true. Tell that to the people who wear Burberry's.
मैं बर्बरी का ओवरकोट पहनता हूँ.
मैं बर्बरी
It doesn't make me look, I'll tell you guys, it does not make me look any thinner. Yeah. It does not make me look any sexier. It does not make me look like I like to think of myself as Jason Statham, but I think even in a Burberry coat wearing an Hermes scarf, I end up looking like Danny DeVito.
मैं DLF Emporio से उन बनियों की बात कर रहा था, the really fat banias who wear Burberry's, thinking that that'll like help them look good, but it does not. You've been a resident of Delhi for as long as I can remember, since I met you. And Arvind Kejriwal has been making moves nationally in a way that he hasn't done since he first got to power. Like, his deputy was almost arrested. Now they're trying to get Gujarat, Himachal Pradesh, other states. For the first time, there's, based on the little I know, maybe could he become a threat to Modi in the next few years or no?
I doubt that very much.
Why is that?
First, not in this election, maybe in the next election we'll get to know better. This election, what I suspect is going to happen is that BJP is going to win Gujarat with a huge margin because the vote is going to be split between the AAP and the Congress. कांग्रेस वाले तो कैंपेन ही नहीं कर रहे हैं, उनका जो क्लाउन प्रिंस है वो कर्नाटक में है. And what he's doing in Karnataka when there is an election in Gujarat, nobody knows. ठीक है? The Patidars have been completely wooed back by the BJP, so they've all shifted back to the BJP en masse, plus the vote splits between AAP and Congress. What the Congress walas on the ground there are telling me is after this election, the party will just cease to exist like it ceased to exist in Punjab. 40% will go to the BJP, 60% will go to AAP. So you will probably, not this government, but maybe the next government, 5 years down the line, तो अभी क्या 2023 है, वो election कब है गुजरात में? इस साल है या अगले साल है?
I have no idea.
Anyway, 5 years down the line, you may see an AAP government simply because fatigue is set in, because at that point the BJP would have ruled for 35, 40 years.
Right, the anti-incumbency will happen, yeah.
Unbroken. The tussle is between the TMC and the AAP to see who breaks the linguistic barrier. TMC has been trying Tripura, which is still not a breaking of the linguistic barrier because Tripura is Bengali speaking.
Right.
It's that part of Hindu speaking East Bengal that was overwhelmingly Hindu and given to India. ठीक है ना? Punjab is technically North Delhi.
Right.
Delhi is South Punjab.
Yeah.
We were all one state at one point of time till it was split.
Yeah.
Delhi, Haryana, Punjab. है ना? So it's again not really breaking the linguistic barrier. Gujarat may represent a breaking of the linguistic barrier. देखते हैं. I think they've gone around it much better than the TMC went around Goa. Goa was a last minute decision where TMC decided to contest. पता नहीं क्या क्या जोकरों को लेके उधर contest किया. Unheard of people, unknown people on the
Goa
ground.
was a very weird. When the elections were happening, I was there. इतनी सारी अजीब स्टाइल की कोलिशंस मैंने वहाँ पे देखी थी कि हर तरह की पार्टी लड़ाई कर रही थी गोवा के अंदर.
And why would they connect to Mamata Banerjee out of the blue?
Made no sense because you're literally traveling from the east to the west to fight an election based on what?
Based on what? You don't understand the idiom, you don't understand the nuance, you don't understand anything out there, but you're still going there to fight the election. So that, I think, see, generally, if you look at the Hindi belt, Gujarat, I would say, is more tied into the Hindi belt. I mean, Gujarati is almost mutually intelligible with Hindi. And when we go to Gujarat, if they speak Gujarati, you can more or less understand what they're saying, right? So it's like Tamil and Malayalam in that sense. I would say that Kejriwal is breaking the linguistic barrier and not breaking the linguistic barrier, whereas Goa was too much of a cultural difference with Bengal. They estimated that they could put a lot of money power into a small state, but they didn't estimate for how culturally different it was going to be.
I also find that the smaller the election, the toughly contested it is.
Yeah.
You know, because there's like a lot of people fighting for a small piece of land and they go all in on that. Come back to defense. So I was in Arunachal Pradesh recently and something very interesting happened where, we had to take a flight to Guwahati. From there, take a train to Nahar Lagoon. From there, take a cab to Zero Valley, where I was there for a music festival. I was wondering why I couldn't really just fly to Arunachal Pradesh like most people can. And it turned out that it's a no-fly zone, right? And I was wondering if you could help me understand, why do we have a no-fly zone in there?
Okay.
Number one. Second, some people in the camp were discussing this theory that Arunachal Pradesh has a weird time zone. That it's apparently like 1.5 hours earlier or before, after, because वहाँ पे शाम जल्दी हो जाती थी. And they're like, if the government accepts that, they will have to accept that, you know, this is not all one India, one GMT 5:30. That'll be a problem.
Okay. So, you know, China is much longer, wider than India, and it still has one time zone. So, at the same time where the sun is rising over the part of China that borders Korea, 5,000 kilometers to the east, the time is the same in Tibet, in Western Tibet.
They accept that.
They accept that. I think India is one of those countries, again, where it's not such a big problem. Okay. So, I accept ki it's weird that you, like by 5 o'clock, the entire sun is up. Sometimes at 4 o'clock, the sun is
correct
up and in your face. Start work at 4 a.m. Okay?
Yeah.
There are workarounds to it. So I'll answer this. This is the second part of your question first. Right. It's not that strange. Should we have different time zones? Yeah, sure, you should. Nahi hua to nahi hua, bas. It is what it is. It's not such a big deal. So for example, in Bangladesh, it's very surprising. Here in India, sab 9 baje is office time or sab technically 11 baje hi pahunchte hain office mein.
Right.
In Bangladesh, everybody is at work by 6:37. Do you know that?
AM.
Yeah, the jam period is between 6:30 and 7:30. Sometimes extending up to 8.
Is it a country that sleeps really early?
Yeah. It sleeps early, it gets up early. There's nothing to do.
Wow.
So, yeah.
Okay.
China wakes up early, sleeps early. But Bangladesh was where I noticed this the most. So this isn't a big issue. The roads, part one of your question, is the big issue. Now, that has a very good reason to it. See, the more technologically progressed you become, you start focusing less on ground forces and focus more on air forces, which can change the war much more decisively than ground forces can.
Right.
So a focus on the army is called ground centrism, and a focus on the air forces is called air centrism. India is slowly moving towards air centrism, not completely but slowly. यानी कि पहले जब हमारा ये हुआ था पाकिस्तान के खिलाफ, वो सर्जिकल स्ट्राइक था on the ground. Ground troops went in Uri and things like that. But the second strike that happened, we went in for aircraft and dropped a bomb in Pakistan proper, not even in Pakistan occupied Kashmir.
Right.
And now, I'll tell you why that's important. It's an indicator. Again, lots of markers to this. If you are a army, Thal Sena, if you build a road here, so assume, नेबर वाली जो फैट आंटी है ना, तू तो गुज्जर है, वो तेरी जाट आंटी है दैट यू हेट, ये तो बोलते रहते
allegedly.
हाँ, गैंडे की तरह है, तो गैंडी जाट आंटी wants to come here. You dig up the entire road from here to her house so that moti auntie hai, she will sink in the mud.
Right.
She won't be able to come.
It's like a moat that you would build around a castle, yeah.
Exactly. ठीक है? You don't want to simplify the enemy's logistics for them. So you do not build roads. You do not make transportation easy, because if it is tough for you, it is equally tough for the enemy. In fact, tougher for the enemy, because at least you know the terrain, they do not know the terrain.
Right.
This is not the way an air planner thinks. An air planner thinks diametrically differently. They are like, bhai, build the road. Because when you build the road, opposite Gandhi auntie, right now she has about 60 meters of garden to come through.
Right.
And I have to keep re-aiming from left to right so far. But if you build a little garden path that is just like...
it's easier for me to...
I am putting her where I want. I just keep the focus here and I shoot her when she comes. And air planners love infrastructure because it gives you targets to bomb.
Right.
It gives you a place where tanks and trucks इकट्ठा होते हैं, and maximum economy of effort. One bomb, you've blown up about 10-15 trucks. Or you destroy the bridge in front and the bridge at the back, 500 trucks are trapped in between, and you can take them out ek karke, like swatting flies.
Right. So, bombing a Gobi desert mein jahan pe militants hai is tougher than, say, bombing like a superhighway, basically.
Exactly. Exactly. Bombing Gurgaon is much easier than bombing... I know Bijwa.
Pokhran.
हाँ, Pokhran.
Yeah.
Okay. Little huts bomb करने के लिए है क्या? Gurgaon, DLF city center. It's if the Americans launch a war against us, that's like a prime target, infrastructure target. Correct. Waiting to happen.
Because we've made everything available. Even for our troops to mobilize, they will have to use the roadways.
Exactly.
Yeah. Why the no-fly zone though?
So a lot of what happens in the Northeast. Now the Northeast, I notice, has not caught up. The bizarre thing, in Pakistan and the Kashmir front, generally we seem to have gotten air-centric. We think in terms of air support, air combat and things like that. The Balakot strikes were one indication of that. The massive building up of infrastructure that has happened in Galwan and things like that is, in fact, Galwan, the Chinese came in precisely because we were building up infrastructure. But in the East, we're not seeing this. I suspect it's because the army command there, the air force is quite weak out there as it is. The army command there has too much power and they're still very ground centric in their thinking and not. Even today, अरुणाचल में जो जैसे रोड्स लद्दाख और उत्तराखंड और इसमें बन रहे हैं, क्यों ऐसे रोड्स अरुणाचल में नहीं बन रहे हैं?
They have horrible roads there.
Exactly, and we're not. Boss, you go now to Ladakh and things like that, their roads are smoother than what Lalu Prasad promised. No, मैं बिहार के roads हेमा मालिनी के cheeks से भी ज़्यादा smooth बना दूंगा. असली हेमा मालिनी के cheeks हमारे लद्दाख roads में. You look at the tunnels we're building there, they're bloody world class. You'll think मैं कहाँ इटली में आ गया हूँ या जर्मनी.
And even though Ladakh is like, if you look at it geographically, it's pretty high up compared to the Northeast.
It's actually tougher to build than in Arunachal.
Yeah.
Similar high altitude tundra climate, but Ladakh is kind of higher and tougher to build. Not that Arunachal is very easy to build, but why are you building stuff here but not building the stuff there?
Yeah.
It shows you that there's a disjoint in military thinking where the Air Force thinking is greater. You have infrastructure where Air Force thinking is not that great. You do not have, you have this cordoning off of resources, like too many security restrictions, bad infrastructure, etc., because it's seen as hobbling the enemy.
There was a sizable army presence even at Zero Valley Music Festival, to the point that the people from the army were at the festival. Like the army was in the festival, essentially serving as peacekeepers, which is very weird because you would never see in a music festival ki army festival ke andar hai. That would deter any,
Okay, so see, therein lies the problem. If you live in Arunachal, there's not much you can do.
Yeah.
I mean, trekking, hiking, bird watching, maybe that's about it. So one might have been just the novelty value of the festival.
Sure, but
But generally, the army presence there is very natural. Locals don't object to it. Have you noticed Arunachalis are very patriotic?
they are.
Sab Jai Hind, Vande Mataram bolenge tumse. Have you noticed that?
Well, I was there under the guise of a music festival, which was not probably the best way to visit and really understand the state.
Udhar Jai Hind nahi bolte hain, udhar Jai Ganja bolte hain, but
So very weird. At the festival, they had this special policy. You can light up a cigarette, no problem. At the festival, they had a special policy called Zero Drugs Zero. ZERO, Zero Drugs and Zero, ZIRO, Zero Valley Festival. And I went there for all 3 days. I was very surprised that I could see no one under the influence of ganja. Everyone was just getting drunk or smoking cigarettes. They really enforce like a no drug policy in Arunachal Pradesh. Like you can go to Himachal Pradesh and you'll see people like whacked out and starting from just Kasol and Puntar. Matlab log barbad ho rahe hain charas pee ke.
Yeah.
Not there. That's not the case there at all. They really they do a good job at keeping.
they do a very good job, and I'm surprised they did it at a music festival.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of it is because of how Sikkim has been destroyed by drugs.
It has?
Oh, yeah. Because see, Sikkim is on the drug smuggling route.
Okay.
It's literally, I don't know why the mainstream media doesn't report about it, but the drug problem there is a nightmare in Sikkim.
I always thought it was just Punjab.
No. Punjab is, everybody talks about, the problem is nobody ever talks about the Northeast.
Yeah.
Okay. Punjab is a very visible drug problem. Sikkim is the drug problem in India that nobody's talking about.
But aisa kaun sa route hai? Like Sikkim is in the northeast. Where do drugs get smuggled?
It's Burma, Bangladesh. It has to go up somewhere.
Okay.
And Sikkim falls on that route. Right? The Indian internal consumption market to hai hi, but it's mostly the external consumption market and shit like that. Most of Myanmar's drugs get smuggled out by ship. But it's on the transitory point for supply to the rest of India.
Okay.
So Sikkim has a very, very bad hard drugs problem.
And do they is it heroin, cocaine?
Heroin mostly. Opium.
I've never heard of that. I mean,
opiate based.
the problem in the Northeast that I found as a layman with 4 days of experience is people just think about Assam mostly. They just think about Assam
because
and
it's got 14 seats.
Yeah. And I met a few Assamese people and did some taxi driver journalism to understand what was happening. They're like, we're the most important state in the Northeast. And they said that with like a certain pride that I couldn't. I wanted to have a flight to Arunachal Pradesh, but I could not. The no-fly zone is also because it's strategically important because it's close to China.
Not just that. Look, Leh technically is a dual-use airbase. You can fly to Leh. Leh is both a military base and a civilian base co-located. That's not the issue. The actual resources and things like that are also very limited.
Okay.
So, for example, taking fuel up there costs a lot of money. Okay. Where is the flat ground for you to station big jets as well as military jets and helicopters? ये सब सोचना पड़ता है ना. So there's a lot of factors going into it. It's not just the ground centrism, air centrism. It's also the logistics and things like that that you have to think about.
We're in 2022, getting into 2023. Do you think India is in any way vulnerable to attacks from China or Pakistan or is our defense any competent than it has been in the last few years? What are some vulnerable points? हम लोग कहाँ पे weak हैं?
Lack of coherence and integration. When you buy weapons from every part of the world, they don't all work together.
Okay.
It's like a workplace that has Apple plus Microsoft plus Unix plus...
Like bad interior design from everywhere. Yeah.
This is the biggest weakness. All our equipment does not function as an organic whole.
And we do that because we want to get our economics sorted. We want to buy it for cheap.
We never get our economics sorted. We never do bulk buys.
Okay.
We technically, we're the country that should be going to the ration shop and buying 40-50 kilos of rice. Instead, we think that our defense policy is like अमीर लोगों का Amazon policy. एक हफ्ते के लिए you get a 2 kilo pack of Weight Watchers sugar-free rice. The next week you get Sela Basmati. The third week you get Lal Killa Premium Basmati. The fourth week you get something else.
So everyone just scrambling for figuring out, how do I use this weapon?
Well, I mean, we know how to use the weapons. The question is, how do you use the weapons together? Assume that you've bought these 4 kinds of rice over these last 4 weeks और हर चीज़ में एक मुट्ठी भरा है. Guest आ जाते हैं. उनके लिए बिरयानी बनाना है. घर में और कुछ नहीं है. जल्दी से मटर जीरा का पुलाव बनाओ. 1 cup sugar watcher rice, 1 cup kacha basmati, 1 cup sela basmati, 1 cup...
It's a bad dish together, yeah.
Yeah, it's a terrible dish together. This is our biggest problem, number 1. Number 2 is the variance in thinking. The variance in thinking is the Air Force is on its own trip, the Navy is on its own trip, the Army is on its own trip. The Army wants theaterization. The Air Force very correctly says, bhai, theaters apply. Theaters don't apply to the Air Force, where you can swing literally within minutes from the China front. The same plane can drop off bombs on China and then 15 minutes later, flying at supersonic speed, drop off bombs on Pakistan.
What is theaterization? Like a Big Bang style of doing things?
Theater is, there will be one military command dealing with Pakistan, there will be one military command dealing with China, there will be one military command dealing with the peninsula. And they're like, boss, for the ground that makes sense, because to shift equipment from one to the other, you can't use tanks up in the mountains. It's infantry based, either it's armor based. But planes, they go everywhere. The logic of it doesn't make sense.
Right. You can be sitting in Delhi and command a plane to run across international borders, but you can't be a military leader. Yeah.
Literally, the Rafale can possibly within about, I haven't measured the exact distance, but within about 30-40 minutes, it can be bombing Chinese positions in Arunachal in the east, and then it can bomb across the border in Jaisalmer area in Rajasthan within about 35-40 minutes.
That's insane.
Yeah. Taking out 2 completely different targets. Here it will be, in Arunachal, it will be taking out a small concentration of Chinese troops hidden under trees, and it will fly within 35-40 minutes without having to refuel, without having to put down, get new weapons, because it can carry many different kinds of weapons at the same time. Go to the Jaisalmer salient and take out tanks. Okay. The army can't do that. And naturally so, because it's different equipment, different logistics, different training, different everything. The Navy is on this thing कि हमको aircraft carrier चाहिए, aircraft carrier चाहिए, aircraft carrier चाहिए. ठीक है? And every frigate class that they build, they only buy 3 or 4. Now imagine a country like America, the preeminent superpower. They have had only one class of destroyer called the Arleigh-Burke. They wanted to replace it with something called the Zumwalt, but huge cost overrun, so they went back to the Arleigh-Burke. So they have 50-60 destroyers, all of the exact same kind, which they keep upgrading. We, on the other hand, keep placing orders for 3 ships, then 3 ships, then 3 ships, then 3 ships with different kinds of engines, different kinds of weapons, different kinds of this, different kinds of that.
So there is no marginal learning cost.
So the third part is the economics. So a lack of a coherent, standardized weapons, a lack of standardized thinking, and a lack of economics. And the problem in all of this is, it's not the military's fault. It's the political leadership's fault. Not this government, throughout Indian history. It is for the politicians to crack the whip, the elected executive, to crack the whip and say, this is going to be the policy. This is the economics of it. You cannot have 7 different kinds of planes in the Air Force. You only need to have 2 kinds of planes, one light, lots of single-engine aircraft, and fewer double-engine aircraft. Economic knowledge is, what is the finance ministry doing if not convincing the defense minister to take these decisions? Okay? Nobody is willing to crack the whip in this country. सबकी जिसकी गाड़ी उसकी भैंस, बेसिकली हियर जिसका प्लेन जिसका टैंक उसका भैंस.
राइट.
मेरे को ये टैंक चाहिए, मेरे को ये प्लेन चाहिए, बेटा ले लो. इट्स लाइक अ किड थ्रोइंग. बेसिकली यू टेल मी, जब बच्चा बदतमीज़ होता है, टॉय स्टोर में बोलता है, मम्मी मेरे को वो ही मैन का ये दे दो, मम्मी वो माई लिटिल पोनी का वो दे दो, मम्मी मेरे को वो तामागोची दे दो. इट इज़ मम्मीज जॉब टू से, बेटा you can buy any one thing. And then beta starts going, मैं ये नहीं करूँगा, मैं अपने क्या डायपर में सुसु कर दूँगा, this that वो सब. And mummy doesn't थप्पड़ मारूफाई him.
Right.
बेटा खराब है या मम्मी खराब है?
मम्मी खराब है. हाँ. Yeah, so it's like a supermarket where everyone just buys whatever they want and there's no unified
approach.
Policy.
And then complicating everything is bloody DRDO. They promise everything, they deliver virtually nothing.
Okay.
हमारा जो LC है तेजस, it was meant to come online in the 1980s. See, 1990s तक आ जाना चाहिए.
Sorry, what's an LC for?
Light Combat Aircraft, तेजस. तेजस फाइटर. अभी साल क्या है? 2023. पूरा एक ऑपरेशनल स्क्वाड्रन नहीं बना है. And in those 40 years, every plane, the Gripen, the F-50, the F-16 came online before the Tejas came online. It has had more iterations and is more advanced than your Tejas. The F-15 came in the 70s. It is still flying. It is still an extremely capable combat aircraft with many, many iterations. तुमने तो अभी पहला iteration भी नहीं बनाया है यार Tejas का. And now, after failing to produce, and America has already, under Trump, 2018 or 19 May, 19 I think, or 20, they tested not their 5th generation fighter, they tested in secret their 6th generation fighter. We are still stuck on an early 4th generation fighter. See, there's an early 4th generation fighter and there's a late 4th generation fighter.
Right.
Some people believe that even that should be split because the advancement that happened within the 4th generation itself is so great in terms of radar technology and things like that, that late 4th generation require a completely different designation all on their own, which is why you have 4, 4.5, 4.75 and things like that. 5th generation is where stealth, amongst other things. I mean, one is networking.
So what is stealth. 6th generation then? The one that they're testing in secret? We still don't
know because America sets the norms for what a 6th generation is, for what every generation is meant. So
when I was a kid, I remember reading about the Lockheed aircrafts. Are those still around? The ones that can...
F-16, Lockheed Martin.
Okay. The Lockheed is in technology where you can...
It's just a company by.
Okay. अरे यार जिसके अंदर वो you can mask yourself on a radar that they can't find you.
Stealth technology.
Okay.
The Lockheed Martin ka F-35 is the stealth fighter. They also made the F-22, which was... So the F-22, their first stealth fighter, which is actually stealthier than the F-35, which came later.
Okay.
They made in the 1990s.
Do you know if there's any aircrafts or other equipment in development that can potentially just be invisible? Like is that?
So stealth aircraft are. I mean, they're not
on the radars. I mean, just visual. Like to the eye. No. Yeah, we aren't there yet.
The technology has been demonstrated for visual stealth. It's been demonstrated on a ground vehicle. I think the air thing is ki bhai, I mean, how do you make... So what happens is, the way it was demonstrated was there's a camera on both sides of the vehicle and your armor is essentially LCD, well, some kind of projection screen.
Oh, right.
So what it does is it's taking the image from that side and projecting it onto this side.
Got it.
Problem, because ground vehicles, they're detected by heat signature.
Yeah.
The exhaust fumes coming out, which is how a lot of planes get detected. with a plane, do you make it radar? Because see, radar invisibility is much more valuable than visual invisibility. Because if you're radar invisible, you can take out your enemy without him coming within 30-40 kilometers of you.
Right.
Whereas visual means you're already in trouble because उसने तेरे को देख लिया.
But you're visually stealthy. How does that pan out? How will they see you?
No, they won't see you. They can still see you through your...
Oh, right, because you're still
infrared exhaust.
available on the radar. Right.
So the question is, it's a trade-off. Do they put LCD screens which project images for close combat, or do they make it radar invisible, in which case nobody will even know that you're coming in?
Yeah. I remember also when I was a kid, I remember watching this show, and I know that America is pretty advanced when it comes to just guns. They had this gun, जिसके अंदर अगर आप एक कोने पे खड़े हो ना, तो you can basically you can use
corner shot. That was Israeli technology.
Yeah, it's a long time ago. Do they still use that?
I mean, those were those special use weapons. It's not like crazy popular.
Yeah.
It's a very specialized weapon.
Do we have weapons? Like, what is our strength when it comes to defense? Like, what are we good at?
We have fantastic troops. They make do with everything in spite of...
We've got numbers?
Not just numbers, I mean, you go to army walas, they're very nice people.
Yeah.
They're very self-sacrificing. They get treated like shit by the government, sometimes even by their own officers. They endure all of it with a smile and they're willing to die for you. For completely worthless, thankless little pieces of shit who live in cities who aren't grateful to these people for what they do. But see, they deserve so much more. And I think every government of India has basically not served them the way they deserve. It's just what it is.
Got it.
And so, slogans aren't a substitute. Like I told you, glib talk is not a foreign policy. Slogans aren't a substitute for improving the life and workload and protection and duty of care you have. The biggest person being let down by your lack of executive decision on sorting out weapons logistics, weapons standardization, tactics and strategy standardization, economics is the soldier. He pays the price. Like we discussed, had Putin done what he should have done on the first day of the war, take out the leadership, take out the energy. Remember, even then when we had the last conversation, what did we discuss? That it was the Russian troops and generals who adapted their strategy so brilliantly to artillery and infantry and invented completely new means that nobody thought possible for advancing deeper and deeper into Ukraine. Now that's shifted again because the Ukrainians also adapted their strategy.
Right.
And they got a new weapon called HIMARS.
A what?
Called HIMARS. It's a rocket launcher.
Okay.
The hero in that was the Russian soldier. The hero in this, again, once the tide turned, is the Ukrainian soldier. ये नौबत ना आती अगर पुतिन ने पहले दिन को ही, if he had ordered a NATO-style campaign against Ukraine. But he was stuck in this bhaichara nonsense.
Like, with Ukraine? Still, despite waging a war.
Even now.
So you're saying he's fighting a stunted war, he's fighting handicapped?
Basically, he's fighting in Ukraine the way the IPKF fought in Sri Lanka. One hand tied behind the back.
So he's not going full assault?
Boss, the Russians get nasty when they want to get nasty. This is nowhere near.
Dude, I thought कि 8 महीने से war चल रहा है, they're going pretty nasty. But you're saying that he's still tied by some diplomatic sanctions. Because he still wants to rule this country, no? He still wants to unify it.
He genuinely believes that they're the same people.
Yeah.
Right. He still wants the legitimacy of those people. How do you gain legitimacy if you offer people that you decide to kill off?
Yeah.
It's the same in India. The troops compensate for so many failures of leadership demonstrated both at the higher military and especially at the political level.
I want to talk about, before we end things, I want to talk about something that just happened in the UK a few days ago. Dude, I was very excited कि अरे वाह UK के अंदर एक ऋषि सुनाक जैसा बंदा आएगा. I mean, he was going to go hard.
से बोला था ना नहीं आएगा.
He was going to go hard on Indians because he would have to show cause, you know, and whatnot. Then this woman came, no one knew about her. I was like, okay, great, another status quo choice, just like Joe Biden. I was like, fine, boring old UK. Then the country started imploding left and right. And like, she was this person who was supposed to get UK moving. That was the slogan, right? And yesterday I was just watching a few like documentaries to try to understand ki hua kya uske saath. Her own party did not trust her, and this is the first time I saw conservative MPs saying ki bro, we don't trust her. It's like this kind of infighting. Like it doesn't happen in India. If you don't toe the party line, there are consequences to be paid.
Yeah, that's because India is a primitive democracy.
Yeah.
The leader is everything.
Yeah.
Okay? We do a lot of that idol worship, which is why even when policy goes wrong, you can't replace the leader. In developed countries, policies matter. But to be fair to Liz Truss, these shits who are shitting on her now, she told you during the leadership contest exactly what she was going to do. And Rishi Sunak, very specifically when she enunciated this policy, said that this is a bullshit policy. It is going to backfire. It is not going to work. The tax rebates and things like that. Knowing that full well, you still voted for her as the leadership candidate. Kyun kiya? You got exactly what you deserved. And then...
Bless you.
Excuse me. When it so happens that what Rishi Sunak predicted very accurately, exactly that happens, तब तुम्हारा ट्रस्ट चला गया. ये क्या चुतियापा है? That said, I don't particularly care much for Rishi Sunak. I generally distrust Indians in power anywhere outside of India.
Why? Because they get corrupted? They're
No,
like, "Arey wow."
you know the biggest Indian disease is validation. You want to be less brown and more white. Do you remember that fellow, एक चूतिया था, Louisiana का governor Bobby Jindal?
Arey haan, how can I forget Bobby Jindal? He was one of the early Trump backers.
He may have been Trump backer, but tha chutiya. You know, we used to have... sorry, wrong accent. You know, we didn't have dal and roti. For us, lunch was peanut butter and jam, peanut butter jellies. They call jelly jam. They call jam jelly. Peanut butter jelly sandwiches. We didn't have time for ethnic food. That's not his exact accent, obviously.
Yeah.
But
he was
साला चूतिया तेरा नाम पीयूष है, accent को कम कर, ठीक है ना? और जिंदल भी है उसके ऊपर, जिंड से आता है, और चूतिया क्या accent लगा रहा है? दूसरा, तेरे लिए दाल रोटी चूतिया कब से ethnic food बन गया बे? Peanut butter jelly sandwiches. What the fuck?
But he has to say that to appease to his voter base, which does not understand India.
So you tell me something. Why is it that Ilhan Omar can be more Muslim than the most Muslim and still win in her constituency?
That makes no sense.
But Piyush Jindal has to be fucking Gore ka gaand chatu in order to win his bloody constituency.
It makes no sense.
हाँ, तो हिंदू जो होते हैं अखंड गांड चातू होते हैं. The need for validation that they have of the Gora Admi and the need to fit in. On one hand, it's good because you know they don't ghettoize and shit like that.
Yeah.
But when you are not an anti-social community, see, I don't have any issue with integration. My issue is with assimilation. You can be completely integrated without assimilating.
Right.
Muslim communities in America, UK, everywhere, neither integrate nor assimilate.
They stand out.
They stand out in the worst possible way sometimes.
But is that really a fair assessment?
Hindu communities, I suspect because of our white skin bias, want nothing better than to have a Gora damad and become white.
Yeah.
Okay, they want to... The worst kind of woke trash that you get in the Bay Area are Indians. They're more woke than the most woke Gora that you'll get.
Right, but they're also equally conservative when it matters. ऐसी बात भी नहीं है.
Who?
Dude, when Trump won, a large majority of Indians supported him.
Nah.
All the shop owners did, all the Gujaratis did.
No. Very small percentage of Indians supported him.
Really?
15 to 20% at any given point of time. See, if you look at the Bay Area, generally this, कौन सा कैमरा का एंगल डालने वाला है? वो वाला. ये वाला डाल. तो ये देखो भाई लोगों. You can see my fair hands in relation to my black this thing. This is generally how a rectum looks like.
Yeah.
This is the anus, and this is the small intestine and big intestine.
Right.
If you turn it around like this, that is what the Bay Area looks like. See the small intestine, big intestine where the shit gets processed, that is your Bay Area, and that little rectum is where the sea comes in. So isn't it so obvious कि गांड चाटू गांड में फंसे हुए हैं सबसे ज़्यादा? Then भाइयों बहनों, I want you to bring up where is the second great Indian concentration out there? In New York, New Jersey.
Correct. Both the coasts.
Now you bring up the map. It will show you that it looks like this. A dick and balls. तो गांड चाटू का proximity तो टट्टे लंड से भी ज़्यादा होगा ना? These are the two. How is it that Indians are maximum in the two areas that either resemble your genitalia and testicles or your rectum?
Yeah, well, as beautiful as that sounds, there's still the coast. There's the most prosperous places in the country. That's why they're there.
Also the highest crime places in the country. Also the most woke places in the country that are doing everything humanly possible to destroy their own wealth.
Yeah, but they're also economic centers, no?
Which is why people are moving away to Texas. है ना? और उधर भी हमारे लोग जाके साले बिगाड़ के रख देंगे. This is why I keep telling you, this socialist thing, I am telling you, Lenin came and I bet you he had some eugenics program where he came and slept with lots of Indian women to create our generation. They go to America to get away from reservation and shit like that and whatnot nonsense. और उधर जाके सारा अपने गंद मैल मचाते हैं उधर.
Yeah, you're very disgust sensitive. I can see that.
Which is why when I go abroad, I stay a mile away from Indians. They're the worst community to associate with abroad.
It's also a very weird thing because,
and mind you, I integrate completely. They'll all be like, oh, Abhijit गोरा है, वो हमारे साथ hang out नहीं करता है, उसके friends सब गोरे हैं ना. And yet I retain, like I used to wear kurtas and shit like that in Melbourne when I lived out there. I can't wear it to work obviously, but outside of work when I'm roaming around, kurta pajama mein jaunga. When I go abroad, even now, I mean, you've seen me in Iran, in Uzbekistan, in even in Europe, where I go for formal meetings, I only wear kurta pajama with a jacket, Nehru jacket on top to ठंडा होता है ना offices में and shit like that.
Right.
ये लोग सब कुछ पहनेंगे. But they have huge social problems making friends with the locals. पर इस सब में मैं गोरा ये हूँ.
Right.
I can integrate without assimilating because I understand what those concepts mean. I don't have those inferiority complexes. इन लोगों को बहुत चाहिए मेरा गोरा दोस्त होना चाहिए. होता नहीं है. Indians aren't very open about it. Africans are very open about it. I remember going to one Nigerian minister. कोई Abuja में ये था conference था, हम सब गए थे. So it was a multinational conference. It just so happened that a lot of us Africans and Indians were closer to this minister, and the Goras, for whatever reason, chose to be at the peripheries and at the back. This thing, the minister says, No, too many dark people around me. All of you go away, calm down. I want more white people. He said it exactly like that. I want more white people around me. I respect because he's honest. These people, they think what the minister verbalized, they don't dare verbalize it.
Right.
तो चूतिए हैं और डरपोक भी हैं.
That is true. My experience in the US has taught me one thing where I met a lot of ABCDs and सब कुछ करते थे, भांगड़ा चलाते थे, गरबा करते थे, सब कुछ. They would do all these activities. But they would have a very hard time saying, hey man, I don't have white friends, मेरे को बड़ी दिक्कत होती है. I kind of feel like they live a very second class existence.
Why do you think that is? Why is it that, say, somebody like me who would cook Indian food all the time at home, but knew the basic tricks of cooking Indian food in a kitchen so that it didn't stink up the entire fucking house, and wear Indian clothes or be very, very Indian, had only Gora friends, whereas it's the issue is about social compatibility. It's not about your ethnicity. It's not about your way of life.
Yeah.
Okay. You can still be very, very Indian and have Gora friends. Not that having Gora, I don't judge my friends.
Based on how white they are.
No, I was a racist out there in that I did not want Indian friends.
Yeah.
I am happy to have Pakistani friends, Bangladeshi friends, Sri Lankan friends, but not Indian friends, because I have enough of India back home.
Right.
Right. I want to discover other cultures, other people's food, other people's... for me, everything's a discovery process. Right. Ye to sab, I know Punjab, I know Assam, I know Tamil Nadu, I know Bengal. I don't want more of that when I'm abroad.
Right.
Every now and then I'd go to Dandenong क्योंकि डोसा घर में अच्छा नहीं बनता था. Dandenong में बहुत अच्छे डोसे बनते थे. ट्रेन लेके मैं चला जाता था उधर डोसा खाने. अच्छे डोसे मिलते थे. Sri Lankan Tamils out there. Lots of them. But I always used to make it this thing and take the Gora, a lot of them were Gora friends, Gora and Chinese, lots of Chinese, Vietnamese as well, to go try all of that. So why is it my ethnicity? I used to go to Durga Puja out there. I used to go to wherever I could get good Indian food, because getting उन दिनों में, I don't know how it is now, but उन दिनों में ऑस्ट्रेलिया में इंडियन खाना काफ़ी की तरह होता था. अमेरिका में भी थोड़ा होता है, the crap that you get in restaurants, right? But I had no problems being... In fact, my Indianness went into overdrive when I lived in America and when I lived in Australia. Precisely because I was missing home and I wanted more of home in a sense.
Yeah.
You know, it accentuates your Indianness.
That always happens. You listen to more Hindi music.
But, the funny thing was... No, I didn't listen to Hindi music, thankfully. That was one thing I never did.
You listen to opera. You're like a big opera guy, right?
So my music tastes don't change. But here you crave Italian food. When you're there, you crave Indian food.
That's just life.
That's life.
Yeah.
But I guess that's how music also works for some people. But here it's... I don't believe that being more culturally Indian makes you a social outcast in America or Australia or the UK.
Yeah.
Or for that matter, even in Italy or Austria.
Well, those countries celebrate differences. They really, really like people who come in as a full package, not as a watered down version of what
they like want. Confident people. When they smell an inferiority complex on somebody, they think you're being diffident and they move back. It is the inferiority complex and the diffidence that is preventing them from making friends, not the Indianness.
Interesting. Well, it's been a fun time, like always.
We
can have we've got Atom kya khane wale hain? I can't eat because I have these things in my teeth. The fake orthotics. So,
these are fake teeth?
Yeah.
You got all your teeth removed?
No, I have my teeth. This isn't orthotic, so I'm on a liquid diet. It's been about 16 days. Yeah, bro, it's fucking tough. We've got dhaba meat for you. We've got a bunch of other stuff for you. Some really good veg stuff that my mom has cooked. Obviously, your Twitter is banned, sadly.
It's not banned. Dekho, ye chutiye jo hain Twitter pe, they're making me...
It was very sad because I was looking at her Twitter. It's been like off since July.
ये देख, ये मेरे को delete करने को बोल रहे हैं. Now, I don't have any problems deleting this except this line here which says, by clicking delete, you acknowledge that your tweet violated the Twitter rules. So, we've taken them to the Delhi High Court.
Okay.
तो ये कोर्ट में होगा. I don't intend to delete this tweet. I'm very clear about it.
And has your Twitterati life suffered?
No.
Because I can't see your tweets.
People seem to think that I can't live without Twitter. I can live without anything.
Except your dogs and your food.
Yeah, dogs and food. Dogs, cats and food. And dogs and cats are not food, just to be clear about it. But by the way, you know, like it's going to be my last few years of eating beef and meat.
Why's
I think
that?
I'll have to go vegetarian and give up beef completely.
Because your animals are getting a
once
taste.
the new house gets ready, I've promised my mom that I will take over the responsibility for the family deity.
Wow.
And that is a responsibility. It's not just bringing a murti into the house and then just doing whatever you want.
Yeah.
You have to, I mean, I'm an atheist, but it's respecting your culture and the traditions that have gone with that's been in the family for like 200-300 years. So,
200-300 years?
Yeah. So
what kind of family deity? Is it like a demigod?
No, it's Kamakshi.
Okay.
One of the incarnations of Durga.
Okay.
Demigod, God.
And is it like a statue that has been preserved for 200-300 years?
Yeah.
Like an heirloom almost.
Yeah. Well, it's not, we don't look at it as an heirloom. It's
sacred, of course.
It's the center of the family.
Yeah?
Yeah.
So I had no idea.
Nah.
I mean,
So, kyun?
you would
Like a lot of
never talk
families are
about
like
it.
Yeah, because it's very private. It's so once, and my mom asked me, she's like, Abhijit, if you want Aman is Amma, mother, Kamakshi. It's a responsibility. If you don't want it, it's perfectly fine. I can consecrate her at a temple somewhere and whatever. I said, no, mommy, I want that because it's respecting my own culture, where I come from, where I'm going to go, etc., etc. And at least if it was a Bengali deity, I could have said, "Theek hai, mutton and fish without onion and garlic is fine." But once she comes in, just forget bringing beef into the house. I can't even touch beef after that.
Yeah, and what else are you going to let go
Shoo
of?
bhi nahi paunga.
Cigarettes also?
No. We're Shaivites, boss. We're not Vaishnavites.
On that note, it's been a pleasure talking to you. People can follow you on your defunct Twitter account for now, Abhijit Iyer Mitra, and check your name on YouTube, which, dude, your name is a firebrand. People really love searching your name. And this name, I mean, you're more famous than AIM. Just the AIM works.
AIM, na?
Yeah.
AIM.
Yeah. So, of course, and thank you so much for this extensive analysis of not just the Russia-Ukraine war, but also many other things. And I deeply respect you. I thank you for all the things you've done for me. And I'm happy to call you a friend.
Thank you. And I'm always grateful to you, more to your mom for her amazing cooking. But I'm grateful to you for introducing... I'm grateful for you, to you for introducing me to her.
Yeah.
But I always enjoy my talks with you.
Thank you.
I just wish you didn't massage my ego so much.
I mean, I'm just doing it now for the camera.
देख मेरा body already फूला हुआ है. तेरे साथ जब मैं आता हूँ मेरा सर बहुत ज़्यादा फूल जाता है. थोड़ा ना कम कर.
I mean, it would change for sure when we start hanging out more in Delhi. Right now, I'm just a young person that you gave several opportunities to, which I'm really grateful for.
Right now, you're a Gujar in Faridabad. When you come to Delhi, you will become a Delhi wala in Delhi.
Let's find out. All right. This was Abhijit Iyer Mitra on Dostcast. Don't forget to subscribe. We'll see you all next Tuesday or Friday. Bye-bye. Take care.